I'm 20 years old, born and bred on the road, and I know the rhythm of arriving in a new place like I know the lines on my own hand. You pull in, set the caravans, level them out with whatever bricks or bits of wood you can find, and the women get the kettles on whilst the men grumble about space and hookups. By the time the first curtain twitchers in the nearby houses ring the council, we've already lit the fire and put the chairs in a circle. It's a dance we know well. Sure enough, the police showed up that afternoon. 2 cars, lights flashing like they found the murder scene. They stepped out, stiff-backed and puffed up, but you could see in their eyes they weren't going to do anything. They never do. Not when there's 10 or 15 of us all standing shoulder to shoulder, looking them dead on. A few words were traded, warnings about moving on soon, but we've heard it all before. They left. They always leave. By the time the sun dipped, we were settled in proper. The place we had set up this time was some country park or nature reserve, I don't know. Wig something. Regardless, we had the music playing from a speaker someone rigged, cousins clapping and stamping to the beat, bottles being passed around. There was laughter, teasing, old songs rising into the night. The sort of evening that makes you glad to be alive, no matter what the world thinks of you. But then, like a slow tide pulling back, the mood changed. Nobody said anything at first, but you could feel it. The air got heavier. It was as if the trees at the edge of the park had drawn closer somehow, leaning in, listening. The fire popped loud enough to make people jump. And the dogs, Christ. You've never seen dogs like ours act that way. Normally, they're mad for it, chasing foxes, rabbits, even deer if they catch the scent. They'll bark themselves hoarse and bolt headlong into the dark. But not that night. That night, every single one of them froze by the caravans, hackles up, tails clamped between their legs. They're barking, aye, but it wasn't the usual racket. It was thin, high, like they were warning us about something we couldn't see. At first, everyone just laughed it off. A few of my uncles made cracks about ghosties, about banshees coming to carry us off, and the women threw little bits of bread into the fire the way they do. Half a joke, half a charm. But no one picked their bottles back up. The music stopped. Even the cousins, who are never shy of a fight or a laugh, went quiet. The dogs wouldn't settle. They stood rooted, eyes fixed on the tree line, barking until their throats went raw. Then, all at once, they stopped. Not like they'd grown tired, like something had silenced them. The quiet that followed was worse than the noise. You don't realize how many sounds fill a night until they're gone. Normally, in a place like this, you'll hear the wind dragging through the grass, owls somewhere in the dark, maybe the faint hum of traffic on the road from beyond. But in that moment, it was like the world held its breath. Even the fire seemed smaller, its crackle swallowed up by the stillness. I swear I could feel the ground beneath me shiver. Not a big shake, not enough to make the bottles roll, but a tremor that travelled up through my boots, a strange little quaver that had no business being there. Somebody muttered a prayer. Another said we should pack up and move on, right then. Headlights blazing down the lane, get out before... Before what? I didn't finish the thought. The strangest part was how everyone seemed to know what the others were thinking without a word said. We all kept looking at the trees, the blackness beyond the firelight, but none of us asked the question out loud, because asking it would have meant admitting that there was something there to be answered. And if I'm honest, even then I think we all knew that whatever had come close that night wasn't something we'd ever chased off with dogs or fire or angry words. It must have been hours later when I jolted awake. No music, no chatter, no dogs barking. Just the slow breath of the family around me, and then, above it, the sound of weight shifting on the caravan roof. Not the light skitter of a bird or a squirrel, not the tapping of rain. Heavy, deliberate. Each thud of it vibrated through the walls right into my chest. I lay flat on the mattress holding my breath, listening as it padded across the roof. Then a sharp clang as it dropped onto the bonnet of the car outside. The suspension groaned like something had landed too hard. I wanted to shout, to shake my dad awake, but I couldn't make a sound. My heart was hammering so hard, I thought it might wake everyone on its own. Then came the knock. Not a bang, not the way people slam on a caravan door when they're looking for trouble. Just a soft, polite tap, like a neighbour asking to borrow sugar. That's what did it. My dad stirred, groaning, my mum muttering something under her breath. He cursed, dragged himself out of bed and lumbered to the door in nothing but his vest. I sat up, frozen as he pulled the handle. Standing there was a man. I don't know how else to put it. Not a copper, not a local, not anyone I'd ever seen before. His hair was long, a strange silver gold that caught what little light there was from lamps outside, and he wore it loose over his shoulders. He was built like someone who works with his hands every day, muscle thick under his plain shirt, and he had a neat goatee on his chin. He smiled. That's the part that stuck in my throat. A wide, easy smile. A smile that didn't belong on a stranger knocking at your caravan in the dead of night. "Evening," he said low and smooth. "Sorry to disturb you." My dad rubbed his eyes, half asleep, half annoyed, but even he faltered. I'd never seen my father falter at a man before. The man didn't offer a hand, didn't give a name, just stood there in the doorway like he already belonged. His voice was clear as a bell, Irish as my own, though older, polished somehow, like the kind of accent you'd hear in old songs more than in living people. "I hope I'm not intruding too late into the evening," he said, smooth as silk. His chest rose, and he breathed in through his nose, long and slow, like he was tasting the air around us. His smile widened. "I just noticed your lot here, and thought I detected some brothers and sisters from the Emerald Isles." My dad blinked at him, still groggy, still trying to place who the hell this stranger was. But something in his stance, half leaning against the frame, half ready to shut the door, told me he didn't like it, didn't trust it. Before he could get a word out, the man leaned forward a little, the firelight from outside catching the sharpness in his eyes. "I just wanted to ask, what brings you to my neck of the woods?" The word "my" snapped out like a whip, hard enough that I felt it in my gut. Not shouted, not loud, but heavy, dragging the air down with it. The dogs outside had gone dead quiet again, not barking nor growling. The silence, thick and waiting. I thought my dad might slam the door, but he didn't. He just stood there. One hand braced the frame, staring at the man like he was trying to decide if he was some drunk local spoiling for a fight or something worse. For a moment, it was just silence. My dad squinting at the man smiling like he had all the time in the world. Then my dad finally snapped, his voice rough with sleep and irritation. "Your neck of the woods?" he said, shaking his head. "You don't own shit, mate." If the words were meant to shut him down, they didn't. That grin on the stranger's face only stretched wider, showing just a little too much tooth. Not laughter nor anger. Something hungrier, like he'd been waiting for that answer. My dad muttered something under his breath and stepped down off the caravan, squaring himself in front of the man proper. And that's when it hit us. Up until then, I thought they were eye to eye. My dad's not short, and with the doorway raised off the ground, he should have been looking down on him. But the moment his feet hit the grass, the truth slipped out like a knife. The man was taller. A lot taller. He didn't lean, didn't shift, didn't even need to move. He just was. My dad had to tilt his chin back the smallest bit, and I saw the realization flicker across his face. He tried to mask it, to stand broad and stubborn, but the rest of us saw it. We all saw it. Impossibly, the stranger's grin deepened, wolfish and sharp, as if the height difference wasn't an accident at all, but something he'd been enjoying letting us figure out for ourselves. "You're a bold man," the stranger said softly, that Irish lilt curling around each word. "I like that." The fire outside cracked again, louder this time, like it was struggling for air. He kept smiling like nothing heavy hung in the air, like we were all back at a scrap of turf having a pint and he'd dropped by for a laugh, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "I've noticed you taking some of the wee critters," he said, nodding towards our little kitchen where a couple of rabbits were hanging from a hook. We gutted them earlier, glad for the meat. His finger stayed pointed, casual, as if he were merely noticing the time. "Consider them a gift from me on your housewarming." He gave that same low wink, like he was sharing a private joke. My dad opened his mouth to spit something back, to claim he'd no need for charity, or to ask who the hell this man thought he was. But before he could, the stranger leaned in closer. The smell of him was faint, like old tobacco and something earthier I couldn't name. Being so close, I could see the fine lines at the corner of his eyes, the way the skin at his throat moved when he breathed. My dad took an involuntary step back. "I have a request while you stay here," he said, voice low and almost friendly. "Leave the woodland critters be for now. You'd be doing me a favor if you did your shopping over there." He pointed down the lane, past the hedgerow and the field where the path bent towards the far trees. "Take his birds. Pheasants. Pesky little things they are. Game for the Lord and his ilk." He spat on the ground as if naming the Lord had dirtied the air. Lord Darby, I think it was. It was the sort of name the old ones in the family muttered about when they meant careful. Rich folk, estates that swallowed whole bits of the countryside, gamekeepers and strict notices, men with dogs who would take more than a glance at you if you were found on the wrong side of the fence. My cousin's eyes flickered to the dark lines of the trees where the mansion sat, a shape we could only make out by its coppery roof catching the moonlight. "What do you mean, take his birds?" my dad said, forcing humour into his voice. He was trying to sound like the man was talking nonsense, like he was trying to make it small. You think we're poachers now? We'll take what we want. The stranger's grin sharpened. I know what you are. And I know what you need. I'm asking you to do something simple. Take from the Lord. Leave the little ones be. He spread his hands wide, palms up, as if offering a bargain. You'll be paid in other ways. No one laughed. My mum came out of the caravan then, hair plastered to her forehead, eyes raw with sleep. She said my name real soft, like a warning, and she saw the man and went white. I could see the rest of the caravans coughing to life, a few torches bobbing as neighbours came to doors, rubbing the last of the sleep away. The dogs pressed themselves into the grass, ears flat, watching the man as if he could disappear into the night and come back with anything he wanted. My dad set his jaw. He'd never been one for backing down, especially not in front of the family. We don't work for you, he growled. We don't take orders. He clenched his fists. The man only tilted his head. You don't have to, he said mildly. And you'll be doing both of us a favour if you keep the little ones whole. And you'll do quite well if you take the Lord's birds instead. For a beat, nobody moved. The night felt different, smaller somehow. The air sitting thicker than it had before. I wanted to shout, to drag my dad back into the caravan, but the way the man stood made the words die on my tongue. He looked like he'd inhabited more room than a single body should, like the space around him bent to fit him. Even in the doorway, half in shadow, he seemed to be the place the dark belonged to. Who are you? My cousin asked finally, voice small. Just someone who likes things left alone. You'll know me when you see me around. Then, without another word, he stepped back. He didn't turn his head as if to leave. He simply folded into the night behind him, and for a moment I thought I heard the leaves hush as if they were obeying him. My dad stood with his fists at his sides, chest heaving. Around us the caravan doors opened and faces peered out, red-eyed, scared, stubborn. The choice was there, sudden and ugly, angry up front and possible with the Lord and his keepers, or a favour done for a man who'd just come whispering at our door in the dead of the night. Neither option sat right. Morning came like nothing had happened. The sky was grey, damp, the kind that makes the kettle steam feel warmer than it should. We sat crowded around the little folded-out table, plates heavy with rabbit and potatoes. My dad and uncles already grumbling. The cheek of him, one of them muttered through a mouthful. Coming to our door in the middle of the night. Talking like he owns the land. If I see him, I'll have a few words for him. Another uncle snorted. Reg, bollocks. We'll just jump him next time. See how tall he looks on the ground. They all chuckled at that, but it was an empty laugh. The kind you make when you're trying to push something out of your head. No one sounded eager. Mum, quiet until then, set her fork down. Maybe we ought to listen to him, she said, sharp enough to cut the chatter. We've no love for the royals, do we? Those birds. Pheasants, was it? They're just left to wander into the roads anyway, getting squashed and wasting. I chewed, listening. The memory of the man's smile sat in my stomach, heavier than the meat. I'd seen a video once, TikTok or Insta, I couldn't remember, about pheasants being bred only for sport. Thousands of them dumped into the countryside just so rich men could shoot them out of the sky. It went really wildlife, not properly. They wrecked habitats, drew predators that starved when the season ended. Even I couldn't find much reason to care for them. "That's true," I said, quieter than I meant. "They're only here for shooting anyway. Mess up everything for the other animals." The table went silent for a second. Then one uncle slapped his palm down and laughed. "Well, there you go, from the young one himself. No harm done taking a few of the Lord's bloody birds." It didn't take long before the idea grew legs. By noon, Dad and a few of his cousins had collars on the dogs, grinning like boys on mischief, and we headed out down the lane. The dogs pulled at their leads, ears twitching with every rustle in the grass. It wasn't hard. Pheasants are stupid things, all noise and no brains. The dogs flushed them out easy, snapping and barking, and by the end of the hour, we had a haul slung over our shoulders and tied up by their necks. Feathers were everywhere, laughter echoing in the hedgerows. But the whole way back, the weight of the birds dragging at my arms, I couldn't shake the thought of that man's grin. How he'd said it like a request but smiled like a promise. And when I looked at the pheasants lying limp in the mud, I had the strangest feeling that we hadn't caught them at all. The next morning, the knock came sharp and early. I thought it might have been the stranger again, but when Dad swung the door open, it was worse. 2 police, caps pulled low, and some posh-looking bloke in tweed with polished boots and a face like he'd never smiled in his life. "Morning," one of the officers said, already sour. "We've had reports of poaching, several pheasants taken." It turned into an argument quick enough. My dad was never one to roll over, and the uncles were out from their caravans before long, trading words with the police. The toff stood behind them, arms folded, eyes like knives. Finally, maybe out of nerves, maybe because I was sick of the shouting, I blurted out, "It wasn't us. Some fella came in the night, tall man, long silver hair, Irish like us. Said the birds were his to give." I swear that the posh bloke froze solid. Just stiffened, like someone had poured the cold water down his back. He leaned in close to one of the officers, whispered something quick and low. Then just like that, they all backed off. No warnings, no threats of eviction, no fines. Just a quick nod and all gone. We were left staring after them, wondering what the hell had just happened. Weeks rolled by. No more police, no more toffs. No sign of the stranger either. Word must have spread, because the camp grew. Cousins from as far as Manchester turned up. More caravans circling the park, more dogs tied up in the grass. Everyone said it was a good spot. Rabbits, pheasants, clean water, easy space, like the land itself was welcoming us. For a while it felt almost too good to be true. Then one afternoon a new lad, one of the cousins' friends, came back through the hedge with a small deer slung across his shoulders. The dogs yapped and jumped at the smell of blood, and a few of the men cheered. Venison meant a good meal. But Dad didn't cheer. He went white. He stormed up, voice low and tight, arguing with the lad. "We said birds. Birds only." The boy shrugged, confused. "What difference does it make? Meat's meat." "You don't get it," Dad snapped. But he wouldn't say more. The words just died in his throat, and he looked over his shoulder toward the tree line, toward the place where the man had pointed that night. The newcomer shrugged it off, dragged the deer to be gutted. The other drifted back to their business. Laughter rose again. Smell of firewood filled the air. But my gut turned heavy. The stranger's voice echoed in my head. "Leave the woodland critters be. Just take the birds." And I knew, as sure as I'd ever known anything, that something had just been broken. That night the fire burned bright, music and laughter cutting through the dark. People were drinking, clapping, arguing over songs. For a while it almost felt like we'd shaken off the unease of the last few weeks. Like maybe we'd gotten away with it. Then the dogs started again. Not just barking, howling. Long, mournful, tearing at the night sky. Some of them snapped at their chains, others pressed themselves flat to the ground, whimpering, pissing all over themselves. Every single one faced the same direction, the black line of trees at the edge of the field. And there he was, the stranger, standing just outside the circle of light, his smile wide and fixed. No sound as he moved, no word of greeting. Just there. My dad noticed first. He half turned, caught sight of the figure, and stumbled back so hard his chair toppled behind him. A ripple went through the camp. Voices cut off, laughter died. Nobody said a word. The man's voice carried clear, as if he were speaking in a hall, not a muddy park in the middle of England. In nature. He began smooth, deliberate. All healthy ecosystems exist in equilibrium. He licked his lips, slow, like tasting the words. Grass feeds the rabbits and deer, and in turn, they feed the predators. They keep their numbers in check. At that, one of the old women gasped. Proper clutched her chest, eyes wide. She was staring at him like she saw something none of us could. Her daughter rushed to her side, but the old woman just kept her gaze locked past the fire. The man went on as if nothing had happened. What most don't realize, he said, is that predators, like badgers, foxes, and jackals. He stopped, locked eyes with me. I swear my bladder almost gave way right there. His eyes weren't right. Green, yellow, sharp as glass, and the longer I looked, the less they seemed human at all. My whole body shook like I stepped naked into ice water. These mesopredators, he continued, his gaze never leaving mine, are kept in check by those beasties at the very top of the food web. He finally looked away, took in the whole circle of us with one broad gesture, his smile softening into something almost weary. Then he breathed in deep, exhaled slow, as if he were disappointed in the taste of the air. My little jackals, he said, nodding towards the deer spitting fat over the bonfire, have been a mite too greedy. The meat crackled in the flames, the smell suddenly heavy and sickly in my nose. Nobody spoke, nobody moved. The fire popped and the dogs kept howling, and I knew something had shifted in the camp forever. The stranger didn't pause to let us answer. It was like his words pressed down on our throats, choking off the very thought of interrupting. I've been moving around for quite a while now, he said, tone as calm as if we were sharing tea. And I would very much like to stay here, and would even more prefer to not draw attention, more than necessary. His grin never faltered, but around the fire faces shifted. I saw two cousins' wives stiffen like they caught sight of something just beyond the light, their hands flying over their mouths. They grabbed their children and hurried into the caravans without a word. A few of the younger ones, not understanding, started to cry, their wails cutting through the silence. The man went on, undisturbed. "Hopefully," he drawled, "you'll be on your way by tomorrow. If not..." He let that hang, then tilted his head, scanning each of us with those yellow-green eyes. "Well, I guess you'll understand that." No one breathed. His smile sharpened as he pointed, deliberate, at the deer roasting on the spit. "Everyone needs to eat." The words crawled under my skin, sticky as cobwebs. He held us in silence for a beat longer, and then again, without turning, without so much as a nod, he stepped backward. The firelight licked his shirt one more time, and the next he was swallowed whole by the dark. But what made my stomach twist wasn't his leaving. It was the sound, as he passed over a rocky patch on the ground. Not the clack of boots on mud, not the crunch of leaves underfoot. Something heavier, somehow softer and rhythmic. A sound I knew but didn't understand until later on. By the time I realised what was happening, half of the caravans were already rolling. People shouting, dogs yipping and straining at their leads, ropes and tarps flapping in the sudden chaos. Everyone was packing up in a hurry, tossing blankets and suitcases into trailers and cars. Only one or two stubborn families stayed behind, frozen in disbelief or stubbornness, and I felt my own heart hammer as I ran towards the old lady. She was crouched low, shaking, hands clutching at the blankets her family had left behind. Tears streaked her face and her lips trembled as she tried to speak. "Please," she gasped. We have to go." I crouched beside her. "What is it? What did you manage to see?" She shook her head violently, like the words were crawling on her throat. I can't say it." Her hands gripped mine, desperate. "But you need to listen, you need to leave. Just tell me," I pleaded, heart in my throat. Her eyes darted toward the edge of the firelight, wide and unblinking. Finally, in a strangled whisper, she managed. He didn't walk on feet. Not like a man." I froze. My mind spun. "What do you mean?" She swallowed hard and pointed just beyond the fire's reach. My gaze followed her trembling finger, but the shadows seemed to swallow everything, shifting like they were alive. "I could just make out 2 paws," she said, voice barely audible. "Jet black, like a dog. Huge." I felt my stomach flip. The words hung in the air, impossible yet somehow undeniable. The hairs on my arms stood on end. Every instinct in me screamed to grab my bag and run. And so, we did. A few stubborn families had stayed behind that night. Some of them laughed it off, some of them just refused to leave. The man who brought the deer, he and a couple of others, insisted they were fine, that nothing would come of it. Weeks passed. Life on the road carried on, but the story came slowly, like a black tide curling into the edges of our own conversations. Apparently, when the police finally arrived to evict the remaining caravans, those stubborn few who'd refused to leave, no one expected what they had found. By the time word got to us, it sounded like something out of a nightmare. The caravans had been destroyed, torn up, roofs ripped clean off, twisted metal and splintered wood lying like empty sardine cans in the grass. And their owners, gone. Not a trace. No footprints, no tire marks, no bodies. Just empty shells of their homes and the earth around them pressed down flat, as if something massive had walked through and claimed the ground for itself. The camp went silent when we heard. Nobody laughed, nobody joked. Even the children stayed close, eyes wide, ears straining for any sound from the edges of the park. We didn't need to ask why. We all knew. The stranger hadn't been joking. He hadn't come to threaten. He had been ensuring balance. And we, stupid as we were, had almost tested him. From that night on, every time the wind rustled the grass or the dogs whimpered at the edges of the woods, I swore I could feel those green-yellow eyes, watching and waiting for us to overstep our welcome.